Okay, so let's talk about the State of the Union first. Not as a Republican, but as a Democrat. If you were there, what should the Democrats be listening for? Is there anything the president might say tonight that they could agree with?
Yeah, there probably is. It's all you never know what you're going to get. It all depends whether he stays on script and on his teleprompter or not. There's a lot of interest in infrastructure. A lot of the country could use new infrastructure. We're falling not just behind China, but behind Europe. So that would be something, if he were serious about it, that it might get some applause, and it certainly would get some work on the Democratic side.
Is this something we could afford to pay for?
Well, we're going to have to afford to pay for it, because if we don't, I mean, that's the problem. The larder is bare after the $1.7 trillion tax cut that wasn't paid for. But infrastructure is much more important than a tax cut, and bad infrastructure will hurt the economy much more than making the tax cut smaller.
So President Trump was elected, I think it's fair to say, as a populist, really appealing to the masses across the country. As we go into 2020, we already have quite a few candidates on the Democratic side who seem to me at least to be almost in a race to get as populist as possible. We have 70% marginal income tax rates. We've got tax on wealth. We had Senator Schumer and Senator Sanders just coming out with this restriction on stock buybacks. Are the Democrats in danger of swinging too far over to the other side of the pendulum?
I think we don't know yet. This is all going to get sorted out. Remember, Democratic voters are to the left of where the average American voter is, just as Republican voters are to the right. Look, we've got 11, we're going to have 11, 12, 15, 18 candidates in the race. What's really going on, David, in the Democratic Party is a generational takeover. And that's what's really, for me, the most interesting thing. Most of the people who were elected came from our core base. Young people, people of color, and women. That's who just got elected to Congress. And you're going to see a lot more of that. These people are motivated to get out. Their vision of the world and the United States looks nothing like Trump's vision. It's almost exactly the opposite on issues like climate change and diversity, immigration, and health care. So that's the real contest. And I suspect whoever we nominate, who I hope is going to be somebody under 50 or somewhere around that age, is going to be talking a lot about those issues, but they're going to be talking about those issues in language American people can understand.
Well, I don't believe she's under 50, but Elizabeth Warren is out with a wealth tax proposal. We had her in the other day, and she really spoke to what she thought people saw out there and why they were really ready to have greater taxes on the wealthy. Listen to what she had to say.
I go out and talk about this with people across this country, and boy, they get it. They get how the rules are rigged right now to help the wealthy and the well-connected, and they are ready for change.
It's interesting the way she put that. It wasn't we should tax because we can invest in infrastructure, we can invest in spending. She said the rules are rigged. Something wrong has been done. Is that your sense? Is there that sort of anger about what's happened?
That's true, and that actually, a lot of the Trump voters believe that, and they voted for Trump despite the fact that he was a quote-unquote billionaire, mostly because he comes across as a reality television populist, and they really have had it. Look, this is ironic to be saying this on Bloomberg, which is a business network, but the truth is that capitalism doesn't work unless it works for everybody, and it's gotten to a point where capitalism needs to be readjusted, and it does need to work for everybody, because it really isn't working for young people with huge student loans. It's not working for all the people in the heartland in this country. And whether they vote right or left, what they're really expressing is exactly what Elizabeth Warren just put her finger on.
Well, and by the way, on Bloomberg, we have business leaders in. We have leaders in finance who come on. We had one on this morning, Blair Efron from Center Review Partners, who said it's not right. We've got to address this issue of income inequality. At the same time, the challenge is, can you do that on the one hand and still have America be competitive on the world stage?
Sure you can. I mean, Europe doesn't work this way. China, it does work this way and has a huge problem, but their principal problem is they have an authoritarian government that's not particularly market responsive. So of course it can. Look, Roosevelt, in my view, Franklin Roosevelt saved capitalism. He was hated by my grandparents and most other people in the Republican sphere, but he saved capitalism. He stopped it from becoming an authoritarian populism. We don't need to get rid of capitalism, but we need to make it work for everybody.
So finally, let me end on a political note here. I mean, you've run for president. You oversaw 2 national campaigns, 2006 and 2008, I believe. It looks right now, as you suggested, we're going to have a lot of candidates on the Democratic side, a little bit like the Republicans last time. We saw how that worked out. How do you manage that? How do you manage it when you get 10, 15, 20 candidates? How do you have debates? How do you winnow it down and make sure you get the best candidate coming out of that process?
Well, you can't make sure you have the best candidate. That's up to the voters. But you can have a process that looks a little more organized. You know, both parties learn from each other. When we do well, the Republicans copy stuff that we did. They just did well. We're looking at the mistakes they made in the debates, and we're going to do our debates differently. We're certainly not going to divide them up by where people sit in the polls and that kind of stuff. And we're also learned, of course, from the experience in 2016, where the DNC took a position on a candidate, which should never, ever be allowed, and it's not going to happen this time.
Do the debates help us figure out who the best candidate is in the end?
Absolutely.
It's not just theater?
No, it's definitely not theater, because you're going to have the people that are well-known, which would be Biden, Warren, and Sanders are going to be the best known. Then you're going to have all these young candidates, some of whom are incredibly effective and attractive, and one of whom I'm hoping is going to be the next president of the United States. Nobody knows much about them. When you get up on the stage and you say things and it's your demeanor as much as it is what you say, that has a big effect on people.